Today we're going to talk about a great man and a secret war and a lesson for all of us. But first I want you to think about something. We live in a time where everything is important and nothing is significant. And to illustrate that, I want to ask you something real, and no judgment. But in the last couple of minutes, as you people were filing in, right? How many people, show of hands, how many people had to check your phones one last time? Good. Now, in the last minute, like literally, like maybe even as I was asking that question, and I'm asking for a brave person, is there anybody who actually had to check their phone one time even after that? Is there anything? Yeah. I knew that, right. We live in a time where we are inundated, right, with these messages and these texts and these DMs, and we are desperate for something or anything to explain them all and put them all in context, to explain the dozens and dozens of terrifying and ridiculous alerts we get on those scary little screens, right? But the good news I have for you is you are that explanation. You are that vehicle for meaning. And what I mean by that is every day, sometimes many times a day, you are having conversations and you are doing things, and the people around you remember what you do, what you say, what you put into print. You are making memories with other people, and those ripple outward. You are sending messages packed with meaning, messages to the future. It's almost like you're writing a page in a journal, and you're tearing out that journal and you're stuffing it into a bottle every single day and throwing that bottle into the ocean. Maybe to be found someday. Maybe to be lost forever. And that's the thing. That's the crucial thing. You don't know what you do and what you say will actually be remembered. What gets through could be vital. It could be a guidepost to other people, people closest to you, but maybe even people you don't know. You could, in some small way, just through a conversation or a simple action, change your industry or your field of study or your community, maybe even your nation. You don't always know. You don't always know. Messages in bottles, messages to the future. And that brings us to a man named Willis Augustus Hodges. Willis Augustus Hodges was a free black man living in Virginia during the time of slavery. He lived in Princess Anne County, which is Virginia Beach today. Most of you, because we're all locals, most of you know that, right? Now, in a better world, Willis Hodges could have been governor. He could have been senator. I think he could have been president. In a better world, Willis Hodges, for what he did, should have had a monument made to him. I think he could actually be on our currency. And I'm willing to bet that most of the people in this room have never even heard his name. I first discovered him in a box of dusty documents in the Library of Virginia Archives in Richmond. They were 19th century coroner's documents. I was investigating a gunfight that had happened in 1878. Now, why were you poking around in coroner's documents in the 19th century? Many of you might have that question. And that's a reasonable question, but that's complicated. The short answer is that I'm an investigative reporter and I poke around in a lot of weird places for information. But this particular coroner's file happened on election night in 1878. And I want you to think about that date, of exactly when that date happens in American history, because it's kind of crucial. On that night, in a neighborhood called Kempsville, there was a story that someone had been basically stuffing the ballot box to try to rig an election. Dozens of black activists went out into the street of Kempsville and confronted dozens of white politicians over this story, over this accusation. People on both sides were armed, and they soon opened fire on each other. The violence spilled out all over the neighborhood, and during that night, there was a former Confederate officer who actually rode a horse into the crowd and killed a black preacher with a single shot to the back. As the violence continued, there was a black community leader who confronted the white sheriff, and the two of them argued bitterly over who had started this. That black community leader was infamous among the white people of that community. The local newspaper called him, and I love this quote, one of the most incendiary Negroes who has ever cursed this section. That was Willis Hodges. When I saw his story, I became fascinated immediately. It gripped you. And I began to piece together his life story through his autobiography, which is out of print, but you can find it on the internet today, which is one, it's one aspect of technology that actually helps us. I pieced together his life story, and it starts like this. Willis Hodges was born in a free black family in 1815 in slave-owning Princess Anne County. And as you can probably deduce, his family had a very complicated relationship with his white neighbors. He was surrounded by constant threats, a constant sense of danger that might be inconceivable to many people in the group today, right? And you would think that his family would be extra careful, that they would not challenge the system of slavery that was all around them. But that's not who they were. Willis Hodges' older brother was put in jail for helping enslaved people escape. He broke out of that jail and he disappeared up north. The white community immediately began to suspect Hodges' family of being in on it. A group of white men rode out to the Hodges family farm. They killed all the livestock. They brutally attacked and raped Willis Hodges' mother. One of them put a gun to Willis Hodges' head and threatened his life if he didn't turn in his brother. In his autobiography, Willis Hodges says, "I closed my eyes expecting to open them again in eternity." They did not kill him. They shot the family dog instead and left. Willis Hodges, he was 13 years old at the time. He was 13 years old. That event changed him forever. In his autobiography, he writes, "That day I swore eternal war against slavery and to avenge my mother's wrongs." He became an activist. He moved up north and from the rest of his life, moved from Virginia to New York and back again, writing and agitating against slavery. He opened a newspaper. He began to become a political leader. And as he wrote and spoke, he became friends with another abolitionist of his time, John Brown. John Brown and Willis Hodges wrote letters to each other planning how to fight slavery. Historians believe that John Brown, as he planned the raid on Harper's Ferry, let Willis Hodges in on what was going to happen. But we don't know the whole story, because after John Brown was executed, Willis Hodges' wife burned most of those letters. Much of Willis Hodges' planning with John Brown is lost to history, and that's not even the most fascinating part of the man's life story. Because while he was in Hampton Roads in the early 1840s, Willis Hodges formed a secret society, according to his autobiography. He was very cagey about what exactly this secret society did, but his family and historians believe this secret society actually helped enslaved people escape. We don't know who is a member of it, and I wanted to find out. I produced an investigative podcast. I went back to the Library of Virginia. I looked at documents, and I began to interview people in the area and outside of the state. And what I found was a network of people today who are looking for aspects that touch on this central mystery. Some of them are fans of Hodges. Some of them are descended from Hodges or descended from family members connected to Hodges, and they're researching their own family histories in Virginia and elsewhere. There are also historians and writers researching the Underground Railroad in Virginia. One of the things that struck me about Hodges' life was how often it could have been that we learned none of this, partly because it was a miracle that he lived as long as he did, that he made it to an advanced age. And the other part is that he faced failure almost constantly. He and his comrades tried to fight, slavery, and that didn't end for years and years until there was a civil war. Afterwards, they tried to transform Virginia. Hodges was a member of the Constitutional Convention. He created Virginia's first post-war constitution. But then Jim Crow ascended, and all the work that Willis Hodges had put together was kind of thrown into, deep freeze for 100 years. And in 2022, we're still working on some of the things that Willis Hodges wanted to do. He wanted to be a community leader and a newspaper man, but he was vilified by the local people. And after the 1878 gunfight I told you about, he was actually banished from the state. He came back anyway, of course, but his last years are a mystery. We don't know where Willis Hodges is buried. There's no marker. There's no memorial. Learning about his life has given me a couple of lessons. And one, and it pops right up, is that the war for social justice is often a secret war. And to learn about that war, we're going to have to find a lot of clues in a lot of different places. Because the official stories will often lie to us or leave things out. We will have to poke into a lot of dusty boxes to get the answers. And here's what I want to tell all of you, and anybody listening, that's worth it. That's worth it for everybody, because until we learn the full story about men like Hodges, we won't know ourselves as a community. And it's not an exaggeration to say the future of this country depends on it. The second lesson from Willis Hodges' life that I have is more personal, and it's heartbreaking. You just don't know the effect that any of your actions will have on the world. Hodges didn't. His entire life he didn't, and he has talents and skills most of us will never have. All your life you could be trying to make the world a better place in some way, and there's no guarantee that all of it will not vanish a moment after you're gone. In a world that does not care whether you succeed or whether you fail, we all are faced with two questions. What is worth doing, even if no one ever knows about it? What is worth doing, even if everyone finds out? And the only thing that sticks with me is to find the things that meet both of those criteria and do them. Do them as often as you can, in as many ways as you can. Do them with love. And I mean this, and it's sappy, but seriously, do them with love for the people around you. Because in a world like this, love is the only thing that actually matters. You might not be able to have the bravery of a Willis Hodges, but you too can take risks. You too can be bold. Also, know that you will fail. You will fail often. You might fail completely, but maybe you'll succeed. Maybe you'll succeed in ways you don't even know. Maybe something you do will be a message in a bottle to somebody in the future. Maybe people you don't even know will someday want to thank you. Thank you all for listening to me.